Hey, it's Larry Sharpe here at FreedomFest, having amazing conversations here, talking about human respect, talking about values, and talking about ethics. And I have with me today, Connor Freeman. Please tell me about yourself.
Hi, I'm Connor Freeman. I'm the assistant editor at the Libertarian Institute. I write columns and news pieces there. You'll see articles every day in the news section with myself and my partners Kyle Anzalone and Will Porter. And I also write news for antiwar.com.
Excellent. So, talking about writing.
Yes.
Literally what you're trying to achieve is persuading people, right? To think in a certain way, whatever the way you think is best or smart or right. That's great. But doesn't it become frustrating sometimes when people just don't listen or don't pay attention or whatever the case may be? And don't you feel that sometimes maybe coercion's a better way of making it happen? I know you're laughing, but I'm being serious here in a way that sometimes people think, look, I want the world to be better, right? I want it to be more liberal, or I want it to be more conservative, or whatever the case may be. You see it in politics, progressive versus conservative, right? But we get frustrated sometimes and we kind of lose that human respect aspect. And we move towards coercion, and we then say, hey, I want to be more progressive. Democrats, make the world more progressive. Or Republicans, make the world more conservative. Don't you feel that sometimes maybe there's a level where you should move to coercion, or no?
Well, I mean, as coercive as I get in terms of the work that I do, it's really about being aggressive in my writing.
Okay.
So one of the things that I'll do is show people in a very straightforward way, say the threat of the U.S. buildup for war with China.
Got it.
And to highlight the provocations and the aggressive policies that threaten us all. And then to put it in perspective so that people can see the risk to themselves, to their families, and their communities. Because these foreign policies seem like everything's happening over there, but especially when we're talking about getting into a proxy war in Ukraine with Russia sitting on more nuclear weapons than any other government in the world, or China for that matter, which has hydrogen bombs and missiles that can hit continental U.S. cities. People have to understand that when we're talking about fighting a war with China over Taiwan or some unmanned rock islet reef or island in the South China Sea that no one's ever heard of in your town, that you and your family could die as a result of that.
Well, you've just said two things that are interesting. Let me see if I can cover both of them. One of them is, you said that as coercive as you get is harsh writing. That's kind of still persuasion, though, isn't it? I mean, you haven't gone to the idea of coercion being either violence or threat of violence or theft or fraud, right? That's really coercion.
Right.
So I love the fact that for you, coercion is still just writing. I think that's amazing. So I'm happy about that. But it's the second piece you said, which is, you said the threat or the worry or concern of preparing for a threat or prepare. That is something that people don't usually think. They think the opposite. They think, no. That's how we're safe.
Right.
Right? If we build the bombs, then we're safe. Right? If we build tanks, then we're safe. That doesn't seem to work. How does that work? Help me.
Well, for instance, if you launch, like Barack Obama did in 2011, the pivot to Asia, the largest military buildup since the Second World War, shifting 2/3 of all air and naval forces to the Asia Pacific, encircling China for a future war, you're talking about surrounding their country with military bases, with warplanes, heavy bombers, submarines, aircraft carrier strike groups.
So this is actually a threat. So this is actually coercion, as you're saying. You're saying that what we're doing by doing the buildup, that is coercion.
I guess one of the things that I would do, and of course, the strict libertarian definition of coercion would be theft, fraud, violence. So
threat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
And so it's good to let's say that I'm highlighting the coercive, aggressive nature of our own state, and then showing the consequences for the American people, and giving it to them straight without qualifying things or trying to make it sound like, well, maybe we are trying to do the right thing, because it's pretty obvious that we're not. So it's very important to punch through the propaganda.
So then let's go the opposite way, if I could, right? What it seems to me that anyone who just heard what you said would see moving your military forces next to somebody could be seen as a threat, right? Absolutely. That could be seen as coercion. Anyone I think would agree that, I can see that. What about the idea of if our intent isn't bad, but our intent is good, right? Now my intent is good.
Yeah.
So I want to move all these weapons closer to Russia so they won't invade Finland, so they won't invade Latvia, right? So now my intent is not a bad intent, my intent's a good intent. Does that change the coercion?
No, because I believe what we see in cases like Iraq, there were lots of good intentions, they told us.
There were, it's true, you're right.
To export democracy, to protect the American
Sure.
people. Saddam has illegal weapons of mass destruction.
Yep.
All these lies about his involvement in the 9/11 attack or some made-up alliance with, with North Korea, Iran, and Al-Qaeda. And
the axis of evil.
Exactly.
I remember
then we go into Iraq and we kill 1 million people and destroy the country and set off a brutal sectarian civil war. And we have all these consequences where Al-Qaeda, who had never existed in Iraq before then, blows up years later into ISIS. Mm-hmm. And we have, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people dying, the war bleeding, the Al-Qaeda in Iraq moving into Syria and then being funded by the CIA and their allies, and turned against the government of Damascus to fight another regime change war. And in Ukraine...
This one I got, hold on. Sure. This one I'm with you. I want to go to someplace now, that makes sense to me. Let me go to something more mundane. Mm-hmm. Still could be life and death, but more day to day. Something where I think you would, not only would you say my intentions are good, but maybe I have some data. Maybe I have data to prove that I'm right. Maybe I have that. So now it's not that I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. Seatbelt laws. So let's say I decide that state A implements seatbelt laws, and now we have data that says there are now less people dying in car crashes. So we have data that shows this. See, less people died of car crashes right after the seatbelt laws. So now I say, well, now I want to make a national law, right, for everyone to have to wear seatbelts. Right? My intent is good. Mm-hmm. My intent is I want to save lives. And now I have data that shows, look, I've got data, it will work. So now I am, at least by my data, correct. And I have good intention. Does that change coercion?
Well, in that hypothetical, we wouldn't really know how many people are now using their seatbelts because it's a law, and maybe they were just using their seatbelts anyway. Maybe more and more people knew people who had gotten into car accidents. Maybe decided, it reminds them, when I get in the car, I'm going to use my seatbelt just in case, because I heard some horror stories, about somebody else in my town who got hit by a car and they went flying through the windshield or something like that. And so, in the same way, regardless, in terms of good intentions, we say that we're trying to protect Ukraine. We're trying to protect...
No, but I want to go mundane.
Keep it to
you got me on the Ukraine piece. I'm in. I'm asking you now about something mundane, like a seatbelt.
Yeah.
Right? And it could be life and death. Mm-hmm. And in this fictitious case, I don't have the data, so I'm making the data up. So
right.
For the sake of this argument, let's pretend my data is correct. Right? I don't know if it's true, but in this argument, I have data that shows that if people connect their seatbelt, that once I pass the law, there were less auto deaths after we passed the law of seatbelts. I have that data. And now I say, okay, I have data now. I'm not just making this up.
Right.
And I have good intentions. Does that change for that law? Is now coercion okay?
No, because you're talking about if somebody doesn't use their seatbelt, that now they can be thrown into a cage.
100%. They're going to be
years
fined.
Of their life taken away. Fine. You take their money. If they resist,
they're going
to
jail.
That cops are very quick to pull their gun and shoot you if they perceive a threat. They can always say that. I'm looking out for my safety, and that's much more important than an everyday citizen, a pleb like you or me.
Absolutely.
And so in that sense, I would say, no, these are not good intentions at all. This is just somebody who's trying to put something on their resume to say, this is why you should elect me and I should be able to continually take your money.
Well, I think for sure that the representative thinks that. But what if I'm the individual citizen trying to push my rep to do it? I don't have anything to gain financially.
Right.
I'm a pleb like me and you, but I believe that I'm correct, right? I saw the data, and so I'm pushing my guy. Come on, make the law. Is that make it okay if I'm not the guy who's gaining, right? In the case of the representative is gaining something. But in my case, I'm not really gaining anything. Is the coercion okay then?
No, but this is, again, another flaw of democracy as far as I'm concerned. You're talking about voting away people's fundamental rights.
Okay.
And so we as libertarians and voluntarists do not support that.
Got it.
Because we have negative rights, we have natural rights, we own our own bodies, our labor, and our property, and any aggression against or threat against any of those is a violation of human rights, and the worst kind. So it could be something as small as that. And everybody, I think people generally, especially in our society, they don't have the worst of intentions as far as voters go, the average voter. but they are deceived by people who
Got it.
definitely have vested conflicts of interest and special interests that they're looking after. But they'll sell people very efficiently on their good intentions. And it just takes a while for people to catch up, whether it's philosophically or just paying attention to the news and seeing that for all your good intentions, you seem to be getting a lot of people killed and causing a lot of civil strife.
Well, see, we just need more laws. That's the problem. So yes, I'm teasing, obviously.
Sure.
But I guess where I'm going with this is I'm hearing you say that regardless, even when there's something you disagree with, something you think that's right or wrong, you still think that coercion is wrong, that persuasion, I mean, you said it, your form of coercion is harsh persuasion, right? That's your coercion. You think that persuasion is the answer. You believe in giving people human respect, even if you disagree with them.
Yeah, and I would say that telling a blunt truth, it can be a punch in the gut, metaphorically. Not
sure.
physically, but a lot of people. I've been. I used to be basically a neoconservative, or I wouldn't say neoconservative, that's the wrong term to use, but I grew up with, in that post 9/11, war mania, fear mania.
Everyone's out to get us, gotta go out and fight them over there, or they're gonna fight them here.
Exactly, right-wing mentality, Fox News on in the house all the time, which at the time was dominated by people like Charles Krauthammer and Steve Hayes and these guys, and Bill Kristol, and so I was kind of, absorbing all of that rhetoric and all that sentiment. And so when I realized that they had been lying to me and people had been dying and we had wasted trillions of dollars and all these soldiers were coming home and blowing their heads off, you become very angry. And you understand that there are people with some incredibly malevolent intentions, and they will absolutely lie to your face.
Right,
to take your money or to take your son.
Sure. So in this case, it's almost like what you're saying is that the idea of human respect, the idea of persuasion over coercion, is almost like a natural principle, like a natural law, a natural principle, to where every single time, always, every time you do it, someone is going to have less happiness, less harmony, less prosperity. Am I right on this?
100%. And I always think of the Ron Paul line, and I believe it's the first chapter or so of Revolution Manifesto, where he says, we should respect each other as rational beings and try to attempt to achieve our goals through reason and persuasion rather than threats and coercion. And that's exactly right. I mean, this is where we get back to the human respect value. And that's incredibly important, especially if you're trying to, because libertarianism is a wholesale philosophy, so it's difficult to get people to just take it. For me, it was quite easy to go, non-aggression principle, you shouldn't use violence against somebody unless they use violence against you, or they threaten you, or they take something that belongs to you, or that always made sense to me. So it was easy for me to become a voluntarist or an anarcho-capitalist. Once I read Rothbard, I was like, okay, I can see how you can do this with the legal system and this sort of thing. But the principle, I think, is still the most important thing. So if that's correct, and I think we agree that it is, then that should always be our goal, is to try and eliminate coercion as much as possible, and not by coercing against others and telling constituents or just regular citizens that we're going to use threats and violence and force to try and eliminate it. We have to do it through respect, persuasion, reason, and writing and podcasting and speaking and
aggressive writing.
Exactly, very aggressive, almost coercive.
There we go. Yes, exactly. That's good. I like that. So I love what you just said. Everything you said makes total sense to me. So then the idea then would be, we would want to lead more with the idea of human respect, regardless of the issue. Lead more with that than anything else.
Yeah, because we were all ignorant and deceived by unless somebody was born with For New Liberty, or Anatomy of the State in their hand, and as soon as they were old enough to read, they were reading, Ron Paul. But no, we all have to meet people where they are and show them respect, because no one's going to listen to somebody that's condescending to them and telling them that they're a moron and they're evil, or they have, to look at somebody who votes for Joe Biden and say that, well, you just want Ukrainians to die. I mean, Joe Biden's policy is certainly getting probably more than 100,000 Ukrainians killed at this point, at least according to...
Well, the point I want to bring up with the war part is, we dehumanize them and we show them no human respect, and that's when it's okay for them to die. And I mean that on both sides. In other words, we look at the nation as a whole, maybe it's a better way of saying it, not necessarily we, particularly around here, not that. But we as a nation, we look at Ukrainians as just like some magic freedom fighters who don't have real lives, who aren't real. So as they die, it's fine. We look at the Russians as just some evil people who are just some evil entity. So if they die, it's fine. So we've dehumanized not only the friends, I mean, not only the enemies, but also the friends. We've removed human respect from both of them. So now we can just watch them die and feel like, well, it's righteous, I guess. I feel like it makes war almost invisible.
Yes. And we are sort of trying to do the same thing even with our own troops. We're supposed to lionize them and really become enthralled with the hawkish veterans who come home and give speeches about why it's right to go around, killing people and fighting wars. If somebody comes back and says that I was wrong about all of this, or they become a whistleblower, or they become an anti-war activist, we're supposed to look at them with suspicion and sort of judge them harshly. And if somebody is getting too, I saw it in the War on Terror, especially during the Bush years. If you were too concerned about the troops that were dying, people assumed that you felt like they were dying in vain, and that's the worst thing you could possibly say. In fact, Ron Paul got into a big argument with Mike Huckabee about that in one of the debates in 2007. And Huckabee's point was, we are one nation under God, and we went in as one nation. Even if it was wrong, we're there now, and we have to win this war. And Ron was just saying to him, but do you know how many more American troops are going to die now just to save face? And so it's very easy for them to say, you don't support the troops, which just means you don't support our policy.
Hold on,
so
you
they
just said
dehumanized our own troops.
Yes, you just said that support our troops dehumanizes our troops.
Because it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the policy. Of course, I don't want our troops to die. Noam Chomsky has a book called Media Control, which was very influential to me. It's one of the first foreign policy books I ever read. And he talks about that, and he goes through the history of that kind of propaganda. And one of the ways it's, support the troops, it's just supposed to prevent you from asking questions about the policy and our ruling class who are sending them over there to do something, to fight some war, to kill some other population, to achieve a political aim that the American people don't really have a say in. They just feel like they have to wave the flag and support these guys, and it doesn't, and tie yellow ribbons around trees. And he was talking specifically about the first Iraq War, the Gulf War. And that was a war we shouldn't have fought, and yet we had horrible ramifications for our own troops as a result, with Gulf War illness.
So let me ask you, as we've walked down this road, do you think that you have thought differently at all about the kind of overarching idea of human respect, or no?
Well, it's. I think it's something that comes naturally to me. But when you put it like that, it definitely reinforces it. It makes me want to maybe even try to be more respectful and more kind to people. I think, especially when you're writing.
Is respect kindness, or is respect just not wanting to coerce?
I think respect is
because you say you do sometimes aggressive persuasion. That's not necessarily kind.
No, it's not.
But it is respectful.
Yes, it is respectful because you're giving people the respect to tell them the truth.
Right. Yes.
And you trust that they can take that truth and they can come to their own conclusions, and that you believe that they're capable of understanding these things. Because when I was growing up, I was always told by the media that national security issues and foreign policy, this is way beyond the average citizen. You can't understand these things. The expert class does, and you're supposed to just pick some member of the ruling class that you like more than the other guy, and then vote for him, and then you step back, and you're now that's the full extent of your participation.
You're now done.
Yeah.
Go back to sleep.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. Good. So I'm glad the human respect piece landed for you, and I hope in the future you use a bit more as a messaging tool for us.
It's a tremendous value to have for, especially for libertarians, because one of the things I first noticed when I went to my very first libertarian event, I went to a Mises Institute event in 2015 in Phoenix, and I had just been, going through all the literature for about a year or more at that point, and to be around a bunch of libertarians who all understand the non-aggression principle. For me, it was a very heartwarming experience to be around a whole community of people who are essentially peaceful and willing to discuss big ideas and to talk about economics and war and central banking and human rights and all these things. And it's a very respectful community, and we can see that here at FreedomFest or any of the other PorkFest or any of these other events we go to. Yeah, exactly.
Even when we argue.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Connor. Thank you so much for coming by.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Larry.
Good seeing you.
Looking forward to talking to you soon.